Chapter 180.1 Like a God. Chen Ping'an and the two children descended the mountain and entered the small town. After seeing the wealthy and exquisite appearance of Downtrodden Mountain and the bamboo building, the little boy in Azure felt like it wouldn't be a bad idea to adapt to the local customs of the small town. At the same time, his longing and feeling of nostalgia for his own hometown also became a little bit fainter. There was a beaming smile on his face as he asked, "Master, where are we going next? To your home in Clay Vase Alley? Master, why don't we buy the entire Clay Vase Alley? It doesn't matter if Master is a bit tight on funds right now. I also have money. I don't dare to say that I have a lot of money, but if I evaluate my possessions in terms of gold and silver, that will truly be quite a large sum. Master, you can use snake gall pebbles to trade with me. Just normal ones will do." Chen Ping'an smiled and replied, "What's the point of buying Clay Vase Alley? That's a complete waste of money." The little boy in Azure was slightly reluctant to accept defeat. However, he didn't dare to talk back to Chen Ping'an. In any case, he felt like his calculations and schemes were extremely profound and shrewd. Was he not doing all this to obtain some extra snake gall pebbles? The little girl in pink felt a little happy when she saw the little boy in Azure being rendered speechless. She also had her own calculations and plans. When they arrived at Clay Vase Alley, she was thinking of helping her master tidy up his home and making it spotless and refreshing. When they arrived on the bank where the creek became the Dragon Whisker River, Chen Ping'an told the two children some stories that were related to the creek. The little boy in Azure was absent-minded as he listened to these stories. However, he suddenly looked at someplace in the river with an angry expression, and he immediately leaped over without saying so much as a single word. Even though he didn't revert to his fearsome true form, his ability to control the water was still fairly composed and outstanding. Each time he punched the surface of the river, it would be as if he were digging out a new well. Large and tumultuous vortexes appeared in the river, and the initially calm river immediately became restless and turbulent. The little boy in Azure walked across the river as if he were walking across dry land, and it was as if he were pursuing something that was hidden at the bottom of the river. As he walked, he shouted, "Blind shrimp soldiers and crab generals, you measly beings actually dare to covet my beauty." Chen Ping'an didn't stop him. Firstly, the little boy in Azure had leaped over far too suddenly, giving Chen Ping'an no time to react and stop him. Secondly, he had indeed felt like something was watching him one time he was practicing walking meditation beside the river before leaving the small town with Li Baoping and the others. It had been an uncomfortable and gloomy aura, and it had even caused a cold chill to run down his spine. However, Chen Ping'an had only just started to practice his fist technique at that time, so he hadn't dared to investigate the reason behind this. He had chosen to keep a respectful distance instead. The little girl in pink felt a slight headache when she saw the little boy in Azure reveal his violent temper again, and she quietly warned Chen Ping'an, "Master, did the imperial court of the Great Li Empire appoint any deity to the Dragon Whisker River? For example, a river guardian or a higher-level river god? We shouldn't take things too far. As the books say, the official in charge is sometimes more effective than the magistrate of the county. The books also say that a close neighbor is better than a distant relative." Chen Ping'an was stumped by her question. He looked around before mulling over this carefully and replying, "If there's a river god, then there should be a river god temple as well, right? But I don't remember seeing any on the way." Chen Ping'an sighed softly in his mind. He recalled the words "more haste, less speed" that he had personally engraved onto a bamboo slip that was resting in the basket on his back right now. With this in mind, he decided to abandon this kind of aimless probing. He looked at the little boy in Azure who was becoming increasingly ferocious as he fought and shouted, "Come back." Above the surface of the river in the distance, the little boy in Azure shook his sleeves to unleash the brilliant glow of his immortal treasures. He laughed loudly and said, "Master, give me a moment, just a little while longer. I'm almost about to catch this slippery little eel. Trying to fight with me in the water? How very? Oh, so you also have some treasures. This immortal treasure looks quite nice. However, it's a shame that I possess an innately invincible physique when it comes to battles in or around water. Stinky woman, your abilities are far too weak. Wahaha! After I capture you, I'll toss you onto Master's bed and guarantee myself an extra snake gall pebble." the little boy and Azure exchanged blow after blow with the yin entity in the river. They both unleashed the power of their immortal treasures, causing brilliant flashes of light to dance above the Dragon Whisker River. Of course, this was mainly because the little boy in Azure wanted to toy with his opponent. Otherwise, with his powerful physique and impressive cultivation, he should have been able to severely wound his opponent even if he didn't assume his true form. After a while, the little boy in Azure turned around and jogged back to Chen Ping'an with a large bundle of black hair in his hand. When he returned to the bank where Chen Ping'an and the little girl in pink were standing, the little boy in Azure let go of the hair and said with a smug expression, "Master, that woman was fairly beautiful, and her bottom was also very plump and round. In fact, her bottom is twice the size of this silly girl's. How about you take her as a maidservant?" The little girl in pink flushed bright red in embarrassment and anger. A head and pale neck floated to the surface of the river beside the little boy's feet. It was a female yin god with a shapely appearance and a pitiful expression. Her raven black hair lay sprawled across the surface of the river, and it undulated up and down and flowed back and forth following the rapid flow of water. She saw Chen Ping'an, and she felt like the young boy had seemingly grown a little taller. However, he still looked as impoverished as always. Yet, as if hazy mist was rising from his ancestors' tomb one, he had actually gained a powerful lackey in the little boy. There was a dark and gloomy look in the woman's eyes, and she quickly pushed aside her complicated thoughts. She lowered her head and sobbed, "I'm the newly appointed river goddess of the Dragon Whisker River, so according to the rules, I need to go around and inspect everyone in the vicinity of the river. This is my responsibility, so please forgive me if I've unintentionally offended you. Please don't take offense at my actions." Chen Ping'an told the little boy in Azure to hurry up and leave the river. He then cupped his fists at the unfamiliar river goddess and said in apology, "No, we were the ones who offended you, river goddess. I'm Chen Ping'an, and I'm a local of Dragon Spring County. Might I ask where you're from, river goddess?" A strange look flashed across the river goddess' eyes. However, she quickly replied in a timid voice, "Since I've become a river deity, it's necessary that I sever my mortal past. This is similar to how Buddhist monks don't mention their names and how Taoist priests don't talk about their age. So please don't ask about my past, young master. In any case, not only do I have no intentions of harming others, but I'll even safeguard the fortune of the Dragon Whisker River." The little boy in Azure was enraged upon hearing this, and he roared, "Master is giving you face, but you're actually refusing his kindness. Are you picking on my master because he's too nice?" Chen Ping'an reached over to place a hand on the little boy's head, preventing him from returning to the river to battle with the official river goddess. He then smiled at the woman and said with a nod, "Thank you for your hard work, river goddess." The river goddess hurriedly waved an arm that was as white and smooth as a section of white lotus loot and said, "I don't dare to accept your gratitude. We become acquainted through an altercation, but young Master Chen doesn't need to apologize or thank me. If you need any help in the future, you can send someone to the river to notify me. I'll definitely do everything I can to help you." Chen Ping'an didn't continue this awkward conversation with the river goddess for much longer. This wasn't his strong suit, and he also felt very uncomfortable about how the river goddess continued to refer to him as young Master Chen. He quickly walked away with the two children, and it wasn't long before they arrived near the blacksmith shop next to the river. Chen Ping'an was slightly hesitant, and he didn't know whether he should head over to say hi to Sage Ruan Qiang and his daughter Ruan Xiu, or directly return to Clay Vase Alley first. The woman who had been promoted from River Guardian to River Goddess, yet still didn't have a River Goddess temple, slowly swam to the bottom of the river. There was a sinister look in her eyes, and her face was also filled with fury. She stomped down and killed an old tortoise in the wet soil. Still wanting to vent her anger, she stomped down again to completely pulverize the shell of the tortoise. Only after doing this did she stop. However, the irresolute river goddess immediately felt a slight sense of regret. The old tortoise that was as big as a millstone had already lived for at least 200 years. Add to that the spiritual energy flowing over from Jewel's small world that benefited all kinds of trees and vegetation and birds and beasts, the old tortoise had in fact already gained a sliver of intelligence. After another 200 to 300 years, it could have perhaps become a useful subordinate for her once it successfully gained intelligence. The river goddess heaved a miserable sigh. She bent down and said to the pulverized tortoise, "If you want to blame someone, then blame that hillbilly Chen Ping'an. He was the one who caused you to die. He's the true culprit. Young Master Chen? Tui. Little bastard who caused his parents to die, why didn't you die on your journey to seek knowledge? Why weren't you crushed into a pile of minced meat?" The river goddess bitterly resented the young boy from Clay Vase Alley. She continued to curse him as she walked along the bottom of the river, and her raven hair that measured 3 meters in length gracefully flowed behind her shapely body like the long dress of a noblewoman. She wasn't paying attention, and she slowly strolled downstream along the Dragon Whisker River. When she finally came to her senses, she realized that she had already arrived at the intersection between the Dragon Whisker River and the Iron Talisman River. Beneath her feet was a rapid waterfall that rushed downward. She hurriedly turned around to run away in fright. Dragon Spring Prefecture had been extremely busy in the past year, with countless spirits and demons rushing over from all corners in the hopes of cultivating here and absorbing the abundant spiritual energy. If she were simply taking advantage of this situation to ask for tolls from the passing spirits and demons to accumulate some wealth for her grandson Ma Kukshuan, then that aggressive and violent great river goddess of the Iron Talisman River was genuinely someone who was bloodthirsty and murderous. Even 2 hands weren't enough to count the number of wandering cultivators who had died at her hands. Strangely, however, the imperial court of the Great Li Empire and the prefectural office of Dragon Spring Prefecture didn't interrogate the great river goddess about this at all. This caused her to feel extremely envious. At the same time, she also became increasingly eager about her river goddess temple that was still yet to be constructed even after so long. Standing near the blacksmith shop, Chen Ping'an was still undecided about whether he should head over to say hi. However, he suddenly saw a young girl in green appear near the stone bridge in the distance. The young girl also saw him, and after confirming his identity, she paused for a moment before walking over at a brisk pace. Chen Ping'an also walked over with the 2 little children. He smiled and waved at the young girl from afar, loudly greeting, "Ruan Xiu." Ruan Xiu answered him and jogged over. After standing still, she said in a gentle voice, "You've returned." I've returned," Chen Ping'an said with a nod. The 2 of them fell silent. The little boy's eyes widened. "Wow," as expected of the daughter of Wind Snow Temple's sage Ruan Qiang. "She's truly very beautiful." "Ah, what a great shame. One truly can't judge a book by its cover. It seems like her temper isn't very good, and she might smash me to death with a single punch if I say the wrong thing. Otherwise, I would definitely call her master's wife." The little girl in pink blinked in curiosity and admiration. When she grew up, she also wanted to become as beautiful as this gentle-looking young girl in green. Ruan Xiu was the first to break the silence, and she said with a faint smile, "Why don't you come with me to the blacksmith shop to have some hot water first? After that, I can help you carry the things that you left here back to Clay Vase Alley." Chen Ping'an replied with a nod. Afterward, Ruan Xiu started to tell him about all the small and trivial things that had occurred in the small town. She told him that she had already gotten someone to repair the house in Clay Vase Alley with an unknown owner. She also told him that business wasn't going especially well at the Berklover shop and pastry shop. When she said this, there was a slightly apologetic and ashamed expression on her face. While Chen Ping'an was away, she had also made the decision by herself to bring the cage of hens and chicks from his neighbor's house back to the blacksmith shop. However, 2 of the hens had been eaten by wild cats because she hadn't been careful enough. Ruan Xiu appeared even more downcast when she said this. Chen Ping'an was quite amused, and he hurriedly consoled her and told her to not worry about these trivial things. In fact, they could even kill an old hen tomorrow to make some chicken stew. His culinary skills had improved greatly, so the stew would definitely be delicious. Ruan Xiu was extremely alarmed when she heard this, and she told Chen Ping'an that he definitely couldn't kill the hens. They were all very well behaved, and she had even given names to all of them. Chen Ping'an couldn't wipe the smile from his face. Only at this moment did the gentle Ruan Xiu realize that Chen Ping'an was purposely teasing her. She shot a gentle glare at him. The little boy in azure also came to a sudden realization. As it turned out, his master had been tricking him from the very beginning. In what way was this big sister bad-tempered? He had suffered a great loss. Regardless of whether he lied, rolled around on the floor, threatened suicide, or even attempted to steal, the little boy in azure felt like he had to obtain this snake gall pebble that had narrowly brushed past him no matter what. Otherwise, he couldn't quell his anger. After walking into the organized blacksmith shop, the initially casual little boy suddenly became pale with fright. Meanwhile, the little girl in pink also ran over to hide behind Chen Ping'an. There were 7 wells. They were scattered like stars in the sky and go pieces on a board. Moreover, Sword Chi was soaring into the sky from each of these wells. Even taking a single glance at these wells caused the 2 little children's eyes to ache in pain. In fact, they could barely suppress the urge to shed tears and revert to their true forms to resist this formless, but profound and mighty sword intent. The little boy in azure and the little girl in pink trembled in fear, with their excitement and eagerness about visiting Dragon Spring Prefecture immediately vanishing in a puff of smoke. Their only thought right now was that this place was filled with dangers around every corner. This place was a thunder pool on Earth, one that was best suited to suppressing relatives to flood dragons like them. Chen Ping'an told the 2 of them to sit down on the bamboo chairs in front of a thatched cottage, while he left with Ruan Xiu to collect some things from a nearby mud house. Only then did they finally breathe a small sigh of relief. They exchanged a glance, and they realized that they both had beads of sweat on their foreheads. 1. This refers to a person experiencing great fortune, as mist rising from the earth can be seen as a sign of life and vitality. However, it is often said in a derisive manner.